Hello and welcome back to In Case of Emergency. We'll be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after the main protagonist spent a night with Wes, the tiger. So I'm pretty sure that there was probably something else there, but because I have the preferences set to save for work, we didn't get to see what happened. So I'm assuming in the next part that we're about to read, or I'm about to read, we get to see how they eventually start training the protagonist to be, the main champion that has to stab at the heart of darkness or whatever. So yeah, let's continue and see what happens. The week flies by too quickly, or maybe it can't go fast enough. With preparations for the journey well underway, the path from your dorm to Redoubt Hall's faulty exit becomes a well-trodden one. Every morning is the same, yet different from any other. Instead of your usual routine of waking up while it's still dark outside, pulling the covers over your head and drifting in and out of dreams until the sound of traffic becomes unbearable around 9 or 10 or whatever. Then stumbling into the common room kitchen to stare at the rattling coffee machine until it delivers you from the melancholy of morning. You find yourself waking up at 7 a.m. sharp to the sarchurin sound of your phone's default alarm. For once, it doesn't sound like the chorus of birds and harpists are mocking you. You're out of the door and into the air-conditioned basement of the philosophy department before the summer heat can become muggy and oppressive. Sometimes you pass by Professor Abbott unlocking the door to his office, who seems unconcerned by the presence of an obnoxiously perky undergraduate in an academic building before 9. Your middle school counselor was right. You can be high on life. You hadn't even noticed the gloom and doubt until it was gone. Like tasting clear, cool water for the first time, you realize your whole life has just been a lukewarm replica of the real thing. Here is the real world, finally, after years of it being just out of your reach. Not only that, it's been waiting for you the whole time. The thought makes you smile. You've been doing so well, in fact, that you hadn't thought about your father in nearly a week. And as you make your way down the staircase, you continue not to think about him. The staircase is very, very long, but it is mercifully finite, and eventually it deposits you at the entrance to the castle hall, where the staff rush to take your bags and guide you to the dining room. Most days, there's a spread of food waiting for you, the table overflowing with flaky pastries. Some dusted with fine sugar, others with a tart glaze piled on top of ceramic plates. Bowls of pitted nectarine halves and fat, emerald grapes. And small glass jars of jam, pale butter, and honey, each with an engraved metal teaspoon set in its contents. Sometimes, the others are already there, making conversation over their cups of tea as the sun streams it through the tall rectangular windows. Wes rarely eats, though. He shows up every morning at exactly 8, a small gym bag slung over his shoulder and his fur damp from the shower. When you ask him about it, he tells you. Went to the gym, had a protein shake. Which makes you all the more aware that what you've discovered is happiness, not discipline. Because while you're thrilled to wake up at 7 for scones and whipped cream, you can't imagine waking up earlier to pump iron and down a chalky mixture of whey and sucralose. It's not that bad. It's a habit from playing sports my whole life. What did you play? I did some wrestling, tennis, swimming, fencing. Football? No, a little bit of lacrosse and water polo, but those never stuck. You gather that he's not a team sports kind of guy. Remus and Cedric usually file in soon afterwards, polite and thankful to the kitchen staff for the spread. Cedric always carried himself a little like he didn't quite belong, and the effect is all the more pronounced next to Remus's air of gravitas. Good morning, help yourselves. Training today? Cedric coughs as he bites into his pastry, sending up a cloud of powdered sugar. Some of it lands on his nose. Yes, of course. We're working on Perry's. Luke is almost always the last to arrive, a wrinkled button-down tossed over his shirt as he rubs his bleary eyes in the doorway. Caffeine. Now. He staggers zombie-like to the tea kettle and pours himself a cup, alternating between blowing away the steam, taking a sip, and quietly pronouncing, "Hot, hot, hot." Man, I wish this place was in a different time zone that lined up with my sleep schedule. Then you just go to sleep later. Luke raises his eyebrow and bobs his head up and down in begrudging assent. The caffeine hasn't kicked in yet, making him uncharacteristically quiet. And so most your days pass like this. In the mornings, Wes runs you through the basic training drills and exercises, teaching you the bare essentials for wielding a pointy stick without hurting yourself. I'm a better player than a coach, but you have no complaints. More importantly, it's a good excuse for his hands to brush against yours, steadying your back and hips with his firm grip. He has to know what he's doing to you, especially after a close call sends the two of you tumbling into the training room's sandpit, his thigh pressed against your crotch. Your breathing hitches as the blood in your body runs south, the smell of his sweat, woody shampoo mingling with the salt of your sweat. His well-built form hovers above you for a moment too long, and his powerful thighs flex against you as he rises, but then he casually dusts himself off and helps you to your feet. Come on, big boy, let's try that again. The flirting never stops either, but for every smirk that cracks his usual blasé demeanor, there's a somberness that accompanies it. When he thinks no one is looking, he, unconsciously maybe, winds the ring around his finger, gazing anxiously at some point in the distance you can't see. A week of the song and dance, and you're not sure you've actually learned anything but the location of the closest room to run a cold bath and contemplate what the rules are for sex before marriage, but after engagement. Afterwards, you spend a good hour or so pestering Luke in the library, who seems grateful for the distraction. It takes a minute to get through his deflections, but he finally reveals that he's been developing the magic for a kind of invulnerable shield. He insists that it's a fringe theory at best, but there's a genuine enthusiasm in how he talks about it. He keeps telling you that there's a book out there that'll reveal how to go God mode. Then it's lunch, and the dining room is again, as though by magic, stocked with steaming loaves of bread and carved meats. And you're a freshman all over again, trying to figure out how not to gorge yourself on the vast variety of food readily available to you all at once. You learn quickly though, because soon after lunch it's Cedric's turn to pull you aside and correct everything you learned that morning. But Wes said, and he hasn't had the training I've had. Your training goes relatively smoothly. Fortunately, you're still new enough to the task that small accomplishments translate to major, relative, improvements in skill. Being part of a prophecy probably helps, but you're still not exactly sure what's expected of you. Without any formal obligations, it's easy enough to waste your afternoons aimlessly wandering the halls of the castle. It's quieter than you initially realized, with most of the hustle and bustle confined to areas around the central hall. The farther you go from the castle's heart, the stranger the rooms get. One door leads you to a room of clocks, old, dusty grandfather clocks with enormous pendulums, intricate wall-mounted ones wrapped in metal vines, and small, stout ones meant to be set on a desk, with hands that remind you of a handlebar mustache and seem liable to come to life and break into song. All of the clocks are broken, frozen at different points in time. If a broken clock is right twice a day, maybe a whole room of them could be right that many more times. Another room features bathtubs stacked on top of one another, and yet another appears to be an abandoned planetarium, except instead of planets revolving around a sun, the colorful glass orbs spin around a larger-than-life skeleton curled in the fetal position. And down a long, quiet hallway and behind a pale green door appears to be a small church, pews on either side of a moth-eaten carpet that leads to a lonely, dusted-covered pulpit. A leather-bound book rests on its surface. Let's be curious. Your hand reaches around the book, a fine layer of dust falling off of it as you disturb it. It leaves behind a clean rectangular of wood in the dust. The words for funeral liturgy. Remus stands at the door with a placid expression, as though he's commenting on what's for dinner. What does it say? What does it say? It's a prayer for the passage of the dead. We haven't had cause to use it in a while. You hadn't realized there was death in this world, which, in retrospect, seems foolish. Of course, there would be death in every world. Oh, okay. Hopefully we can avoid using it for a bit longer if we are successful in our quest. Though I suppose it won't matter if we fail. Have you ever lost anyone? The question takes you by surprise. I'm not gonna lie. I lost my dad recently. Remus nods. My parents were led to believe they had lost me early on. The former king and queen? No, actually, they were academics, obsessed with the ancient world. He cocks his head, lost in thought for a moment. Loss is difficult. It changes us, changes the world around us. But no one is ever really gone. When someone leaves this existence, they also leave their absence behind. Like a footprint left in drying cement, or a name carved into a tree. You're not sure your dad left anything of the sort behind, except maybe the weird anxious feelings you get when you try not to think of him. But maybe that's what he's talking about? We tell the world someone was there, through this violence. To carve something out in this world, it's just as much to carve meaning into it. What will you leave behind when you are gone? The atmosphere of the church lends a certain gravity to his words. If nothing else, it's comforting to hear someone else fill the silence. Remus leads you out of the room, leaving the book behind in its place on the pulpit. Maybe another time. He has other duties to attend to that day, but on others, you spot the king in the garden, enjoying a pot of tea under the gazebo. When he sees you, he waves you over with a pleasant smile. It becomes part of your routine, your homework and other responsibilities long forgotten amongst the sweet smell of roses. A new path becomes added to your day, the walk through the stones inlaid in the garden dirt, winding through the fragrant thicket of roses, dahlias and lavender, past the vine-covered trellis and into the cool stone halls of the castle. Then it's a dinner, more talk about plans, and then the climb back home. No nighttime return is as eventful as your first. Being thrown back into your body becomes less shocking and more depressing. You can't help but feel sorry for the person you're leaving behind. He has no idea how great his life actually is, locked out of real happiness. Or is it that reality of his happiness? By pure ignorance. You sleep better than you ever would. You imagine that's your consolation gift to him. A trickle-down happiness from the fortunate to the less. A week passes quickly this way. You wake. Head out the door with a smile on your face. And with anticipation pounding in your ears. Kieran. Professor Abbott stands in front of his office door, a stack of papers tucked under his arm. Good morning, Professor. Good morning. I'll have your letter of recommendation for you in class today. Oh, right. You've forgotten about that. You haven't thought about getting a job in a long time, at least a week. Thank you, I appreciate it. You nod and start shuffling away, signaling that you're ready to leave the conversation. You don't have time for this. You're about to embark on a real journey today. Are you trying to leave? You freeze in your tracks. What? No, why would you? He shakes his head and points to the emergency exit before you. That exit is locked. You'll want to leave through the front door. Right, of course. I'm just going to the bathroom. I just have to stop by the bathroom first. Kieran. This guy will not let you leave this conversation. Be careful. I read in the newspaper that it would be exceptionally hot today. Stay indoors. Right, that won't matter much for you. I will, Professor. Thanks. Your legs are itching to race down the staircase, but you force yourself to wait until you hear the sound of Professor Abbott's door clicking shut. Downstairs, the castle is bustling with activity, staff moving to and fro across the waxed floors, balancing various provisions in their arms. You make your way to the dining room, following the smell of freshly baked brioche when someone pulls you aside and ushers you to one of the castle's many side rooms. A troop of servants are waiting for you, each holding a particular garment that you've been fitted for over the course of the week. They make stilted bows towards you before asking permission to dress you. A week of dealing with straps and buckles has taught you to put aside your pride. Sure, thanks. With your permission, you're descended upon like a swarm upon a carcass, limbs lifted and stuffed into your leather raiments, straps tightened and belts clinched. It reminds you of being dressed for kindergarten by your mother. Whatever happened to that sailor outfit? The boots are slid snugly around your feet, the hardened material soft and supple against your toes. A braided belt is pulled taut around your waist over layers of linen and toughened hide, and there's a leather loop tied to it that you assume your sword, the sword, fits into. You barely recognize your reflection in the humble mirror leaning against the stone wall. It's both what you expected and nothing all like it. For one, you don't look like a corny kid in bedsheets with a foam sword. But you also don't look like the grizzled, handsome men on TV, their faces shiny with grime, sweat, and blood. So it's not cool, but it does feel real, which is an unexpected development amidst all this. You're looking at the magic of fairy tales, not flesh to bone, but rags to dresses, mice to coachmen, and frogs to princes. You can't help but check yourself out a little. There's a knock at the door. Wes enters the room and shuts the door behind him. Hey, looking good. So do you, handsome. You look good too. Wes looks you up and down appraisingly, his eyes lingering a little too long to plead innocent to only platonic interest. You adjust the hem of your shirt, feeling your face go warm. Ready to go? Yeah, got my wallet, my sword, and a sack lunch with a bottle of water. Wes chuckles and shakes his head. It's been a while since we've gone on a quest. It's good to be prepared. Is it going to be dangerous? Whatever dangers might be on the road, the grin Wes flashes at you feels infinitely more deadly. Why scared? Don't worry, I'll protect you. God, he's hot when he does that dumb, macho confident thing. You unsuccessfully try to stop the stupid smile that's spreading across your face. Your cheeks are going to ache if you keep this up. I'm looking forward to getting away from real life for a bit. Thank God I won't have to do any of those essays I haven't been doing. Me too. Apparently I'm throwing another party this week. I think the excuse this time is my younger brother's new drawings. What, like your parents stuck them on the refrigerator? Wes laughs, his open mouth revealing rows of sharp teeth. More like a national museum stuck them in their new modern art exhibition. Did you say this was your younger brother? He's 17. He sold his first painting while I was still working on my college applications. Then he dropped out of high school, and now he's in museums and theaters around the country. It's hard to picture anyone related to Wes quitting school to pursue the visual performing arts. You were imagining a family of cutthroat businessmen and lawyers doing lines off of strippers on yachts, or whatever it is rich men do. I didn't think that there'd be artists in your family. Wes shrugs. It's probably from my mother. She's an architect. I don't know where my older brother got his thing from. I don't think he's had a job, ever. So the only responsible person left is you. You're starting to get a picture of how Wes fits into his family, sandwiched between two vagrant siblings unfit to inherit their family business. You don't think this is a responsibility he wants as much as it is one he feels obligated to fulfill. Unable to turn it down, but unwilling to stop running from it, he's spinning in place. No wonder this place is an escape for him. Wes shivers, fluffing out the fur along his neck. Don't remind me. There's a humble carriage waiting for you outside the castle grounds, a smart, trim buggy that looks like it could barely fit a few people. Magically powered, no steeds, no fuel, no motors, very eco-friendly. That sounds great, but you're still not sure how any group other than an alley of clowns could fit in here. Remus waves you over from by the carriage's doors, one foot resting on the steps. Interesting choice of armor, Luke. If anyone else has anything to say about it, they don't speak up. Cedric has a pained expression on his face while Wes looks nonplussed. After you. Remus clambers in first and extends a hand to you, pulling you into the carriage. Whoa. The vehicle is bigger on the inside, its conservatively sized door giving way to a lavish train car. The soft carpet flooring depresses under your weight. The others climb in quickly after you. Cedric is the last to enter. You notice there's a new short sword hanging around his waist you haven't seen before, and it taps the side of the doorframe as he enters. He notices you looking, and as he takes his seat, explains. I was told it was for good luck, supposed to protect you from getting sick, poison, stuff like that. He shrugs as he runs his thumb over the golden pommel of the sword, as though it might confer on him some of that luck. The carriage begins to move on its own, lurching forward with a start before stabilizing to a more steady speed. It's really happening. The entire morning has been such a blur that you hadn't had a chance to comprehend what you're getting yourself into. Remus rolls out a weathered map on the table, holding one of the corners flat with a pouch of coins and another with an abandoned mug. He snaps a finger at a particular point. Here will be our first challenge. We will reach the Willow Groves by tonight, but it would be in our best interests to set camp outside its borders. The Willow Grove? What's that? A haunted forest. The trees bleed black at night, and the air smells of iron. Oh. Then we will continue through the abandoned silver mines of Osgroundzithan. We will have to leave our carriage in the hands of the closest village, and if all goes well, we can return for it. Osgrozi what? Sorry, the mines of what? Osgroundzithan. It's a civilization that preceded ours. No one knows where they went, only that they left behind abandoned mines and ruins. Cool. And finally, we'll make our way across the Sheerton Cliffs. The invisible bridge can only maintain one's weight while one believes in its existence. You peer closer at the map to get a better look. Each location is lovingly rendered in ink, winding rivers drawn alongside intricate forests and coastlines. Why go around the river? We can skip all of this if we just cross here. Luke puts his finger on the map and Remus shakes his head. Tisk tisk. The rapids are far too dangerous this time of year. The glacier runoff makes it impossible to cross. Remus wraps a knuckle against the spread map. A proper adventure. It has been a while. The minutes pass slowly. There's no window to look out of, though you're not sure what kind of view you'd get from the warped proportions of this car. Luke pulls out a deck of cards and wraps West up in a card game, while Cedric and Remus pore over the map and discuss cities and rivers that you've never heard of. I don't want to do either of them. You join Wes and Luke, who are happy to accommodate you in their game of Go Fish. By the time you've handily won a few rounds, Luke suggests raising the stakes with poker. He even throws down a few gold coins on the table. Wes agrees, and who are you to do anything but cave to peer pressure? In a matter of a few games, you're cleaned out. Luke has a big mouth, and unfortunately, good enough luck to back it up. There were a few times Wes could have won with a better hand, but he's always too quick to fold. As for you, well, you never had the best of luck anyways. Suddenly, a sharp crack sounds from outside the carriage, and the room is sharply tilted to the right, sending tables and chairs sliding across the interior. Everyone scrambles for the opposite end, trying to get a hold of anything bolted down. The carriage begins to violently shudder and shake, bouncing up and down on the unpaved dirt road. There's a rattling sound near the back axle. Sounds like we blew a wheel. Fix it. Yeah, let me just grab the spare wooden wheel in the trunk while we're still moving. Turn it off. Luke already has his hand out in concentration, muttering what you think is an incantation, except you heard under his breath. Do this, Luke. Fix this, Luke. Magic basically makes you an on-call handyman, right? The carriage seems to begin to slow, the rattling growing quieter, until gravity begins to steer towards the front of the car, like a roller coaster about to go down a steep drop. Everyone moves slowly towards the back of the car. A stray coin slides off a table and towards the front of the carriage, and the whole thing tips forward, plummeting downwards and sending the furniture on another journey across the carriage. I stopped it! You feel your stomach rise in your throat, weightlessness in the near freefall. Actually, freefall would be better. As it stands now, the 5 of you are careening down a bumpy hill, occasionally leaving the ground only to slam back down with the sickening crunch of wood. Out the door! A particularly nasty bump dislodges you from your perch, about to throw you against the furniture piled up at the front of the car when something catches your collar. Watch it! Now you're choking, the hem of your shirt pressing against your throat. Somewhere you can't see, there's a low, heavy thunk and a crack. Suddenly, the sound of you barreling down the hill is much clearer. Someone must have busted down the door. Straining for your breath, you tap Cedric's arm in surrender. Shit, sorry. Cedric lets you go. The gravity throws you, albeit less violently than if he hadn't caught you, against an upturned table. From your sprawling position, you see Wes leaning half of his body out of the moving car, one hand on the frame, one hand back towards the cabin. Cliff ahead! Luke furiously tries to loop at one end of the heavy rope, muttering the whole time about Boy Scouts and bullshit. He presses this end into Wes's hand. Wes braces himself against the doorframe and readies the rope like a lasso. Kieran, your sword! Luke knots the other end of the rope. He then looks around the room for something to secure it to. The sword! You finally understand what Cedric is saying and fumble for the scabbard at your waist. Your hands are sweaty as you unsheath it, awkwardly trying to find your footing amidst the constantly changing gravity. With 2 hands you plunge a sword into the floor of the carriage, piercing through the carpet and wood like butter. I got a tree! The rope is quickly disappearing out the door. Luke wastes no time throwing it over the hilt of your sword, and the 5 of you feel the front wheels of the car to begin to pitch precariously forward. And then the rope goes taut, jerking the carriage to a sudden halt. Your body is tossed forward and back by whiplash. That's going to hurt in the morning. Out! Get out right now! He ushers the rest of the group out. Remus extends a hand to help you to your feet, which you gratefully accept. The sword! It'll be fine. We need to get the carriage away from the cliff face first. Battered, bruised, and exhausted, the party pulls back the carriage from the edge of the cliff. The basin at the bottom looks like it was once carved out by a roaring river, but at the present, there's a more reasonable stream of water flowing through. Once the cart is stabilized, you retrieve your sword unbent and unscathed, and resheath it at your hip. The sword can't be pulled out by anyone other than you, not even by the force of a carriage careening down the hill. The physics of that are a little bit troubling, but not as much as the fact that anyone can stab with your sword, but you're the only one that can pull it out. You're good at wedging the sword into place where it can't be taken out. Great. You were hoping for something a little cooler, but it feels inappropriate to complain right at this moment. You join the rest of the group as they sit around the grass. It appears as though our journey will require a detour. Remus retrieves the map from his side and spreads it out at the bottom of the grassy knoll, looking a little disappointed. We can follow the river. There's a town, Convenience, not far from here. At the same time, Wes frowns and Luke lightens up. Are you sure that's the closest? Convenience? There's supposed to be a book there that I'm looking for. Wes, do you not want to go? Wes's frown grows deeper, but he only shakes his head. It's fine. Good, because the book I need is going to come in handy. There's another guy who's theorizing making magic into numbers, the true grimoire. But he did it in reverse. If you can break down magic into its most basic principles, you can use that like building blocks to make anything. Numbers into magic. I guess? Side quests. We'll keep an eye out for it. Thanks. Luke gives you an amused look you can't quite place. After you disperse, Cedric calls over from the carriage, where he's squatted by a broken wheel. The wheel didn't just break on the road. I could have told you that. Most people don't make wheels that snap when you go over pebbles. Then what did? Cedric runs his thumb over a missing part of the rim. It's smooth. If it snapped, there'd be splinters. It must have been an unfortunately timed pocket of void. Is it possible it was done on purpose? Only if earthquakes or thunderstorms can be done deliberately. There's no void gods, it's just a part of the world. It just happens. At this point, you just hope you don't have to walk. The sun high above you, the five of you follow the river until your feet ache. The mood is sullen. Even Wes, normally stoic, looks pessimistic about your prospects. Remus keeps staring at the map, muttering occasionally that your surroundings don't exactly match what's depicted. Eventually a town looms over the distance, dotted with red-roofed houses and white plaster walls. It's placed right by the river, which stretches a little wider here, water lapping gently by the wooden docks. The river is calmer than expected. Not only that, but as you grow closer to the town, you spot a raised drawbridge that would allow you to cross the river. You could bypass the forest and the mines and the cliffs altogether. Remus seems to draw the same conclusion because he furrows his brow and rubs his chin in thought. It's well into the afternoon by the time you arrive at Convenience? Perhaps we should rest here for the night. Wes blanches. We can keep going. We'll camp just outside the town. We're making good progress anyway. No, I think I'd like to speak to someone about why the drawbridge wasn't on the map. That's just not right. And I want to find my book. Cedric doesn't speak up, but he does look pretty tired. Let's keep going, let's rest here. I don't know why Wes doesn't want to stay here. But I guess we can rest here? It wouldn't hurt to take a break. I could do with a rest. Now that you're getting a better look at him, he does look worse for wear. That's 4-1. Very well, we should first ascertain when the bridge will be lowered. As Remus turns towards the direction of the bridge, a guard approaches the group. Halt! Under orders of the Mayor of Convenience, no one is to leave the town until we apprehend the culprit behind the attempted murder of Lord Boscia. And how long will that take? If the guard recognizes the king of the entire realm, he doesn't show it. As long as it takes, citizen. Luke's eyebrows rise. Did someone say murder mystery? Attempted murder attempted murder. All I'm hearing is reason to stay. Come on, we solve this murder to get out of town, catch a break, maybe look for some books in the meantime. Win-win. Did you say Boscia? I know the Boscias. If anyone's after them, it's their rival family, House Remorant. Good, you four seem to have this under control. Investigate the attempt at Lord Boscia's life, and we will continue in the morning. He turns around without waiting for an answer. his cape whisking behind him and disappearing into the crowd. Cedric sighs, his breath shaky as it exits his nostrils. Let's head to the Bucicias. Maybe we can find some more information there. You should rest. Do you need a break? We can grab a room. I'll grab a room for him. You two solve the murder, and I'll find a nice bookstore to read him a bedtime story from. No, I'm fine. Let's go. The four of you approach the Boscia Manor. A heavy golden knocker is embedded in the mouth of a small caniform. You rap twice on the dark wooden door. You hear people talking inside. I'll wait outside. Luke grabs him by the back of his shirt. Hey, if I'm sacrificing looking for the secrets of the universe for this, you can stand around for 5 seconds. A voice emanates from the knocker. Hello? Lady Boscia, this is Cedric, working for the Crown. We met many moons ago. My acquaintances and I are here to investigate your husband's case. There's a long silence on the other end. You begin to think that she's ignoring you when, finally, a sigh breaks the silence and the door clicks open. It's Electra. Mother's not here right now, and I'll be upstairs. There's no one on the other side. You step into a lavish foyer with a fireplace crackling in its hearth. Oh, you've ruined it. There's a young man standing in the center of the room, back to the four of you. He holds a sheet of paper with writing on it in one hand. Sorry? I'm sorry? It's no issue. It's not as though I was practicing for my father's funeral. He sighs loudly and turns to face you, his face puckered like he's just tasted something sour. He makes eye contact with Wes and freezes. You hear Wes's breath catch behind you. Wesley? Sky? Oh no. You look well. Sky sniffs indignantly, a cool air settling behind the two of them. I, should go. I have to find somewhere for us to stay for the night. Stay here. The Boscia estate has multiple guest rooms. We couldn't possibly impose. I see. Not that you stayed in any of said guest rooms when you were over. Oh God. Oh God is right. This is painful. How about that weather? Let me guess, Wes and this dude were a thing. We're here about your father, Pipsqueak. We're here to find out who tried to kill your father. My father went to sleep last night and never woke up. He's not dead, at least not yet, but I'm preparing just in case. Not yet? Why do you think he's going to die? Sky shrugs. Father's a powerful man. He has a lot of enemies. He always believes someone would try to poison him. When did he go to sleep? After dinner, as always. He had his usual glass of wine and passed out upstairs. Father usually wakes up at the crack of dawn and goes for a run, but he never woke up this morning, and believe me, we try to wake him up. What are you preparing for? His funeral, of course. I wouldn't want to be caught without a touching eulogy as his only son. This guy is starting to get on your nerves. People process grief in different ways. Oh right, because your dad died, so this reminds you of that. Is it his situation or his attitude that's familiar? Everyone here needs to go outside. You shake your head to clear your thoughts. You need to focus. Don't you feel even a bit sad that your dad might be dying? It is a little bit suspicious. Is there an inheritance if he dies? If you think I'm getting anything, think again. Electra's his favorite. Electra? My sister. She was supposed to leave today to get married, but, well, you know. Father's dying. She's upstairs, if you want to talk to her. He glances down at the paper in his hand again, then looks up, like he's surprised to see you still here. Thanks. We'll go talk to her now, if that's alright. Upstairs, the king has been moved to a guest room to rest. It might not be a proper bedroom, but the place is extravagant nevertheless. Thick blue drapes hang from a window overlooking the courtyard, opposite it to a beautiful armoire of polished wood that looks expensive. A young woman sits on the edge of the extravagant, king-size bed, dabbing at Lord Boscia's forehead with a damp cloth. His eyes are closed, and he shudders infrequently in his unconscious state. She notices you enter and her eyes widen. Cedric, it's good to see you again. You too. I heard you're getting married. Electra sighs, like there's no right way to answer the question. Yes, an arranged marriage. I was supposed to leave today, but the roads are closed. And Ellie? She's fine. Electra nods towards a blade hanging from her waist, clearly eager to change the subject. I'm glad to see you make use of our gift. Cedric nods. He looks almost as exhausted as the Lord. Of course, we'd like to help your father any way we can. I don't know what happened. He had dinner with the Remorants last night. If anyone wanted to see him gone... So, poison in the dining room by the Remorants? Case closed. Why hasn't anyone been arrested? Electra's lips pull together into a tight line. There's no evidence, which doesn't mean that they haven't done it. So, what we need are clues. We have to check out their place. Luke promptly marches out the door like a man on a mission, Wes close on his tail. Sorry, we'll be right back. On your way to your next destination, you fall in line with Wes behind the others. Did you know that guy? The guy back at the Boscia's house. He didn't seem to like you. Oh, yeah, I've talked to him a couple of times before. I haven't seen him in over a year. I'm surprised he still remembers me. His voice is nonchalant, but he rubs the ring around his finger as he talks. How do you know him? How do you two meet? I met a lot of people while traveling around here. It's no big deal. You figure out he doesn't want to talk about it. Wes shrugs and raises an eyebrow at you. Don't worry, it wasn't anything serious. He's got nothing on you. He better not. I sure hope not. You feel warmth rising to your cheeks. Wes laughs. You're cute when you're flustered. He squeezes your arm and strides ahead to meet the group. His longer legs easily outpace you. There's that funny feeling again, that swimming sensation in your gut whenever he teases you. You've gathered that West is pretty casual about his relationships, but you can't quite place where you fit into all of this. Are you going to not be anything serious? Did Sky think that there was something more? The butterflies in your stomach flutter anxiously. Upon arrival at the Remorant's mansion, Lady Remorant invites you all for tea. Cedric hangs back to whisper to you. Don't drink any of it. I'll wink. You wink at him in reassurance. You got this. It's terrible what happened to Lord Boscia. I can't imagine how distraught the family must be. She pats under her eyes with a handkerchief, though there's no tears. We all knew his drinking habit would get to him eventually. His drinking habit? His drinking habit? Oh yes, he drank with every meal, and then some. You think he just had too much wine? It's certainly possible. After all this time, maybe his body finally gave out. Were you close? Were your families close? She laughs politely. Don't let the rumors fool you. Our families may operate rival merchant companies, yes, but we never harbored ill will towards each other. I thought him absolutely mad at times, but he was a shrewd businessman through and through. What about the dinner last night? I heard you went over to dinner that night before Lord Boscia was found unconscious? Indeed, I have nothing to hide. It was an ordinary dinner like any other. The Lord had a habit of drinking hemlock wine, you see, whenever he had guests over. He believed it proved his bloodline's superior constitution. And he drank that wine last night? Yes, I always believed he was bluffing. That's what our dear Alizarin told us, anyway. She was closest to the family out of all of us. Well, perhaps he was serious that night, or his hubris finally caught up to him. She blinks her eyes rapidly, trying to give the appearance of holding back tears. She might be faking her sorrow, but you have no reason to think that she's lying. Yet. Thank you for your time, Lady Remorant. By the way, do you guys have a library or anywhere I can look for rare books? At the doorsteps to the Boscia family, you can't help but wonder. If Lord Boscia really did drink hemlock wine regularly, is it possible that he just got unlucky that night? It sounds familiar. I think he might have had some when I was over. How do you know the Boscias? Wes and I came down here a couple years ago. We helped out the family by clearing out their crypt, and they invited us to dinner. You're a little jealous. You wouldn't mind running errands in the city without an ominous countdown to the apocalypse hanging over your head. Just another thing that you've arrived a little too late for. In the foyer, Sky is still pacing along the rug, rubbing its fibers thin against the marble. He monologues to a ficus in a clay pot. I did not know my father very well. No, I shouldn't say that. He looks up from scratching something out on his paper. I assume you're back with the culprit? Lady Remorant told us that your dad drank hemlock wine that evening. Sky sighs, pausing his pacing. My father drank hemlock wine nearly every night. He believed his Boscia blood would make him immune, whatever that means. You couldn't pay me to drink that poison. Great, that's not something you should have told someone investigating a potential poisoning. Sky bristles. Like I said, he drinks this wine nearly every night, and he's fine. He has exactly 1 glass a night. If I thought it was important, I would have mentioned it. There was nothing different that night? He didn't do anything different that night? Lady Remorant said that she thought your father was bluffing. Maybe someone swapped his drink for real hemlock? Maybe someone gave him real hemlock that night instead of the fake stuff? Sky narrows his eyes. Are you calling my father a liar? He would never... Do you still have any of the wine lying around? No, we threw it out after serving it. Prove it. Can we look in your kitchen? Can we check your kitchen? Maybe there's something else that poisoned him. Sky crosses his arms and puffs his chest out, trying to look as imposing as possible. He takes a step towards the doorway leading to the eastern wing of the house. Absolutely not. I forbid it. I won't be a suspect in my own home. Of course not. We believe you. We're trying to clear the air so no one gets the wrong idea. Right now, you're full of wrong ideas, one of which involves breaking and entering. I just remembered that I was supposed to check in with Remus an hour ago. I have to go. We'll go with you. No. I mean, it's okay. You guys stay here and clear the air. No one needs to go in the kitchen. I'll be right back. You dart out the front door before anyone can stop you. Once you're sure you're out of earshot, you round the corner of the house to its eastern face. You have to step on the very tips of your toes to get a good look into the windows of the house. You can make out the fuzzy outline of the back of Sky's head. Next window. You creep over to the next window, placing your hands on the windowsill and pulling yourself up to peer inside. Pots and plates and dried herbs dangle from the walls. Jackpot. There you are. You nearly fall from your perch in alarm. What are you doing here? Don't worry, the others are keeping him busy. Let me give you a boost. You wonder if he's just trying to avoid Sky again, but then he gets to his knees and intertwines his fingers, waiting for you to get on. He butt rests your feet with his hands as he pushes you up to the window latch. In surprise, your tail smacks his face. Oof. Sorry. It's okay. Price I pay for the view. Your face burns as you fumble for the switch holding the window closed. It pops open with some fiddling, and you swing the window open. Give me a boost. Wes lifts you inside, and you scramble onto the kitchen counter and softly drop to the floor, nearly face planting in the process. Wes follows behind you, and for a moment you worry that he'll be too big, but then his body seems to squeeze smaller to accommodate the narrow gap, and he pops out unharmed. With his hands resting on the windowsill, he smoothly and silently slides himself to the floor in a single fluid motion. Damn. Wes whispers to you. Look for the wine. That's the wrong Sprite. You don't need to be told twice. The two of you quietly search the kitchen, lifting cutting boards and moving aside crates of vegetables. At one point, you stub your toe on something hard and metal, and you yelp in surprise. You hear a raised voice from the foyer, and both you and Wes hold your breath as you dive behind a stack of crates. A moment passes, then another, and you hear the other's voices calming down Sky, and no one comes. You breathe a sigh of relief. Looking down at the floor, you see that you stubbed your toe on a trapdoor. You nudge Wes. There's a cellar. That's got to be it. Wes nods silently and reaches for the handle, pulling it open slowly. Its iron hinges creak ominously. Wes slides into the cellar behind you. There's barely any light coming in through the cracks of the closed trapdoor. You can make out the outline of a tall cabinet on one end, and, as your eyes adjust, you see that the walls are lined with barrels upon barrels of wine. This is the place. Look. Wes examines a row of upright caskets and bottles set apart from the others. A small wooden plate with the words "Toxic, do not touch" written on it hangs in front. Next to the collection is a crate of herbs with long dried stems, clusters of small white flowers on one end and thin yellow roots on the other. Is this hemlock? I'm not sure. Remus would know. You pocket some of the plants. We should take some of the bottles too. You reach for one of the dark bottles and grab it by the stem, but the glass is more slippery than you expect. The bottle smashes against the ground. Shit! You can faintly make out yelling upstairs. Footsteps are stomping your way. Hide! Wes hisses through his teeth. He looks around and pulls you by the hand towards the cabinet, wrenching it open and squeezing the two of you inside. It's barely big enough to stand in, and Wes has to hunch to fit. You can feel his hot breath tickle your ear in the darkness. Just in time, the trapdoor opens with a bang, and a voice comes from above. I know I heard something. It's probably nothing. Just to be clear, I'm not going down there no matter what kind of vintage cask you have in your niche. There's no response. A warmth radiates from Wes's body. He can't be more than a foot away from you. All you can do is reach out and... The trapdoor slumps shut, and the footsteps and voices begin to retreat. After a beat, Wes laughs quietly in relief, his voice husky as he whispers. Holy shit. Let's get out of here before they come back. You can feel more than see Wes nod in assent. Your own heart is still pounding. Right. Neither of you move. You're still frozen in the spell of proximity, acutely aware of the faint scent of bergamot on Wes's fur, and, underneath it, the smell of him. Your mind races down 100 different paths, at least a quarter of which involve waking up next to him, legs tangled together in the sheets and your face buried in his chest. Another half sends the blood from your brain straight to your neck. You really hope he doesn't bump against you south of your waist. Hey. As though reading your mind, Wes's breath is suddenly right against your face, his nose practically touching yours. All you can see is the glint of his eyes in the darkness, but you can smell him all around you, feel his hands gently reach for your hip. You're sure he can hear your heart pounding in your chest. Your throat goes dry in anticipation. Hey. You lean into his touch as your hands grab a bicep for balance. He's solid and unshakable, barely wavering under your weight. Wes cranes his head forward, his lips hovering by yours. Then he closes the distance, kissing you. Your eyes flutter closed as you feel the rasp of his tongue against your parted mouth. Wes rumbles low with pleasure as his weight pushes you against the wall by the hip. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Does he do this a lot? Make out with guys in closets? What happens to them afterwards? You think back to Sky Boscia, which is not really the image you want in your head right now, but his halty face comes to mind anyways. What was his deal? Did they make out down here? In the guest room? But then Wes's hands are on your ass, squeezing, and a renewed sense of urgency washes over you as you hook your fingers into his belt loop and pull him closer. Despite the intensity of the moment, there's a fragility in this tight space that makes your heart race with an equal measure of arousal and anxiety. You feel like the spell between you might break at any moment, and you'll wake up at home, alone. It's your first kiss together, and you're already fearful it'll be your last. You pull Wes in closer, practically slamming yourselves against the wall as your foot stumbles back and... something is knocked over in the cabinet, the sound thunderous in the cramped space. You both freeze, neither of you daring to breathe. The moment is lost. Only silence greets you as Wes slowly pulls away, and after a moment, tentatively pushes the cabinet door open. He stares at you for a moment. You wonder if you look as wild as he does, the fur on his head mussed, and his face flushed with desire. Wes finally looks away. It's a bottle. What? He picks up the object by your feet that you knocked over. It's a bottle, almost empty. Gotta be the wine Lord Boscia drank last night. You nod, your faculties slowly coming back to you. The blood leaves your neck and thankfully starts traveling back to your brain. You need all the brain cells you can get. We should go. After regrouping with and filling in the rest of your party, you agree that it's time to catch your breaths. Cedric informs the group that the closest tavern is by the docks, leading the four of you towards the western edge of town. The sun is setting as you arrive, the sky purple and orange against the saltwater bay. The ships are stuck, just like the people, locked by the orders that no one leaves until the mystery of Lord Boscia's illness is solved. Ah, the smell of begrudging merchant capitalism. Our little babies are growing up. Cedric is the first to hobble through the tavern door, clutching his side. The door closes behind him. You, Wes, and Luke look at each other. Wes shrugs by lifting his shoulders slightly. Luke shrugs by raising his shoulders, hands, and eyebrows all together, mumbling, And that's where I'm gonna leave it for today. So, what did you guys think so far about this little murder mystery that we find ourselves in? Do you think the son did it? Maybe the daughter? Or maybe someone else did it? Because it's a little suspicious, and obviously he's in a coma because he's not dying yet. But, a person can only be in a coma for so long, especially not being hooked up to, machines and stuff to keep them alive. So, what are your thoughts? Write it down in the comments section. And what are your thoughts so far on the relationship between the main character and Wes? Because obviously, the main character likes Wes. I mean, that was my choice, but, he likes Wes. And Wes seems to like him, but he also seems to have a history with this Sky guy, the deer boy. And it seems to not be a very good history, and it seems to be maybe something that Wes does, sort of like a hit it and quit it type of situation. And hopefully that doesn't become a thing with, our protag. We'll have to see. Would you guys have picked someone else as your quote-unquote companion? Would you have picked Luke? Or gone on a Cedric option type of route thing? Or maybe a Remus one? Write it down there. And yeah. So, thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play In Case of Emergency yourself, you can find it over on itch. And You can find a direct link to it from the creator's Twitter page, which I will link down in the description. And again, I don't see a Patreon link. If I do find one, I will post a link down to it in the description, but until I do, there's nothing I can do about it. I suppose I should ask the creator if they have one, because this story has been going on a while, I think, and it's actually going to end this year, so, yay, we found a story that actually is going to end soon. That's not going to just keep on going on and on and on and on. I'm not, throwing shade on some stories, but yeah. But anyways, I guess I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.